Saul Kaplan. He's been away innovating around the country, world. Where was Chicago?
We're in Chicago.
Chicago, you're going to see a massive upswing in economic growth in Chicago after a week's worth of visit from Mr. Innovation. Thank our friends at Deepwater Wind, the embodiment of innovation, I think is fair to say, who is got things going both in Connecticut and Massachusetts right now. Let's start with the 40-page paper application at UHIP. Literally, Deming Sherman said it last week with Kate, and took a couple of reviews of his comments and then literally asked the department for it. It is a 40-page, there's a couple pages of instructions. If you could understand them, you're a better person than I am. And there's a couple other federally mandated pieces of information. So I'm going to say of hard fields that need to be filled out, it's 32, 34 pages.
Yeah.
How can this be in 2018?
Well, first of all, if Deming Sherman's involved, if you need a special master, we know, we've got some challenges.
By the way, he's been a corporate attorney for 30 years.
When you need a corporate attorney to come in and sort this out.
Who has been the master of piling up paper on deals, right?
Yeah,
paper the deal, paper the deal.
So if it requires 40 pages, let's remember what UHIP was designed to do. This was taking 5 distinct programs,
right?
Including SNAP, the food stamp program, but 4 others,
correct?
And consolidating them onto on a platform. So the application process, I'm guessing, is the application process that is necessary across all 5 programs.
Absolutely.
And I'm guessing here, because I didn't read through the 40 pages. I'm guessing that each of the 5 programs has its own eligibility requirements and information that's required, and that they couldn't take the application down, to a 2-page application that works for all 5 programs, because then all of the sources of the programs, whether it's the feds, or the state, right, would have to give up on some of their requirements. So the real innovation would be an application process that actually could open up access, to all 5 programs. I'm guessing what we have here is an amalgamation that ends up being a monster, to come in the front door, right, where they're asking you questions relative to 5 programs when I'm just in there for the 1 or the 2 that that I think.
Or if I'm poor and very much in need, I could be in 3 or 4, all 5.
Right. So I think this is part of the challenge and why you end up with 40-page applications, because the work to get to a much more streamlined process, never mind why it's a paper process in the first place, is work that requires each of the programs to be reimagined so that you really could streamline that process. Okay, that's just the application before we start talking about what the software does.
Absolutely.
Right, and managing each of the transactions related to those 5 programs.
So all that could be true, except for if this was 1976. I'd go along with this if this is 1976, and if you want to go back to 1972, where computer programs were punched on those cards.
Right.
I don't remember what they were called, but punched on a card when I was a kid. That would all make sense. It is 2018. This started 5 years ago.
Yeah. So your question is,
we've spent $500 million, and no one thought about the actual gateway process to the entire $500 million.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did a lot.
Do you remember Tom Monahan from Leonard Monahan?
I do, yeah.
One of his creative exercises for brainstorming was to get a group together and design the worst possible whatever. So he was saying, if you're going to design a new mattress, let's find the worst possible mattress. It would be spiky, it would be wet, it would be this, that, and then you reverse it and you come up with the best. It seems like what they've done is they came up with the worst, and they forgot to reverse the engineering.
I'm also going to guess that they didn't ask for the name and address 5 times for each program. They took advantage of the consolidation opportunity to centralize that. The problem is, and it doesn't matter whether it's a paper process or as you intimate, this should all happen online. The truth is, even if you move those forms online, until you get the source programs, the people who own the programs, to agree to a different onboarding and eligibility requirement.
Absolutely.
So that you could cut it from 40 to 2.
So I guess there is.
That's
so
the
according
problem.
to discussions with them, you have to then potentially, if you cannot all these forms have to be approved, and in some cases you have to get waivers.
Right.
Right? I don't know how anybody could come up with an idea. And by the way, I'm going to ask you to look at it so that next time you're on,
that we can
you,
actually
you,
talk
you,
about
you can talk
page
about
32
it.
on
No,
the
no,
40-page form.
Question 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you can get through the first 2 pages and understand what they're asking, you're an intelligent man.
But
You probably filled out a number of forms.
But this part of the process, right, the eligibility requirements and what information is required to determine whether someone's eligible, these programs are not established here locally. We don't get to determine our own, right? If they accept the money from the feds, they immediately accept this is what eligibility means, right?
You are designing none of our forms for us here at GoLocal. Not one.
Well, that's okay. I can live with that. That's okay. But this is just the intake process and the form. This is the problem with the whole project to begin with, trying to take 5 programs and to streamline them. And where's the efficiencies in creating forms and or software to do it? Now we start talking about the training necessary to get people to manage a new workflow.
Right.
Because whereas before you had 5 discrete programs, probably people responsibility for each of the programs, and a workflow about managing eligibility, enrollment,
100%.
Transactions, taking people out of the program, and now you put that all on the same platform and you say to your staff, right, all of you are now going to be capable of running this process for all 5
Well,
programs.
Deming also pointed out that as the 5 programs came together online in the integrated structure in September of 16, the state correspondingly laid off 60 employees who had the most knowledge of implementing each of those programs.
Well, they had a hypothesis about what the efficiencies were,
right?
And rather than waiting until the efficiencies got driven out, right, they took advantage of those efficiencies. And what they learned the hard way, which we often learn when we try to jam software into a new process, where the workforce isn't ready to use the new process and maybe even undermine the success of the new technology because they're not that interested in changes in workflow and their roles and their jobs, right? So it turns out that the change management, the training, getting employees, that are excited about a new workflow and that are using technology in a new way, turns out that they try to resist new software that's coming in because they don't like what it means for the change of their job. They certainly don't like it when up front the analysis says X number of you are going to lose your job.
Right,
so it doesn't make the remaining folks all that happy about changing the way they do
They are not invested in making this the most efficient transition.
And this is the problem in any innovation where you're betting all on the technology and you forget that there are real people involved. Right now we're talking about the capability necessary to execute the new workflow, that weren't involved in the design of the workflow, that didn't buy into it, where we didn't execute a change management process where people were excited about the opportunity to be more productive, in their work.
Absolutely.
And then we ended up having every problem that you see in a classic change management situation to this day, where we're still not able to execute and leverage the new technology.
Is part of it then, if you're going to properly execute a major innovation project, one, get the team that's going to be a part of it, whether they're in the short term or in the long term a part of it, really bought in and given some incentive to participate and make it successful. I mean, isn't that absolutely critical?
Yes, but I even want to go one step further back. It doesn't start with just the staff or the people that are going to execute the process. Innovation starts with the customer, right? And involving the customer directly. What I want to understand is if today I'm trying to get social services, and trying to get eligible so that I can help feed my family, house my family, get at my health care.
Well, I mean, think about it. Most of these, and the state's been in deficiency for, a year and a half on just food stamps. There's two vehicles for food stamps. There's a 30-day approval process, and then there's an expedited 7-day. The 7-day is delineated because it's an emergency situation. These folks need food, and in most cases, the state was once months behind in that. Now, I guess 80-something% is now in alignment. But if you're part of the 13%, and you don't have any money, it's why you're eligible for it,
So
you're
now
in a distress.
imagine the conversation, if you'd had that conversation with the citizen, the customer up front. We imagine a new process where you're now going to be able to get access to multiple state and federal programs, including the SNAP program.
Right.
But it's going to take a little bit longer. The application process is going to be a little bit longer because it covers all 5 programs. And if all I'm really interested is in the SNAP program, right, that's not a lot of value added for me, is it?
No,
And
zero.
so I think the first conversation about the use of technology in an innovation process is understanding the job to be done not through the lens of the state agency that's trying to be more efficient,
Right.
but through the lens of the citizen and through the lens of the customer. What is the job they're trying to do? What are the pain points in that job, and how do we make it better for the customer?
Right.
If you put in software that makes it better for you to deliver for less money, but it's more painful for the customer, you're going to hear it immediately and incessantly, right? Because you didn't design for the customer,
Listen,
you designed for the internal.
Those
things,
call
right?
centers,
Right.
it appears, based on his comments, it's still a 2-hour wait period for people to get answers to basic questions about their application
Right.
at the call center.
So where's the innovation, if you define innovation as a better way to deliver value to the customer? So let's start
Well, I go
with-
to the Tom Monahan. I
right.
go to the Tom
Yep.
Monahan. Could you design anything worse?
Right.
Hours of waiting in line, or calling for sometimes call centers. You're calling for the most basic little. I'm filling out the application. I'm confused about question 73, and the fact that it's a 40-page. I mean, you couldn't.
Now-
You're piling up the.
Well, now compound both of the problems. First of all, we didn't start with the citizen or the customer in mind and say, how do we define innovation for them?
Right.
Because in the end, whatever we do, right, if it doesn't deliver value for them better than what they currently have,
Right.
you're creating more of a problem, than a solution. And then you compound that with what does it take to actually deliver the new solution?
Right.
And then you have the problem we talked about earlier, which is the people that are necessary to the humans that need to be involved in executing the new workflow.
Yep.
They're not that jazzed up about the new workflow. So now you've created pain for the customer.
Yep.
You've created pain for the staff, and you haven't realized the actual benefit to the agency or to the state, around a more efficient process. So you basically end up having pain all around, right? And this project has a lot of it.
Yeah, it is the perfect how not to. Really should be made into an online video for state, municipal, and federal agencies when considering an innovation.
But this is true for any government.
But let me ask you a
service, right?
question. Okay, the federal government, the state government, both complicit to some degree. But isn't it why you hired Deloitte? Like, doesn't Deloitte
Right.
bring that expertise that they would say at some point, just happenstance in some staff meeting, hey, maybe that 40-page paper application is not the best idea we've ever seen. We tackled that a little easier over in Oklahoma or wherever else they've been operating.
It is up to the partner you choose to help you design and implement a program like this to make sure that you have a full understanding of what you're about to undertake and what it takes to do it. Not just the technology and the software and configuration of the software, but the people that need to deliver it, the way customer value is defined, right? And so the question really is, did Deloitte tell the state what was necessary, and then, like a lot of these projects, they had to trim pieces off of that process, right, in order to get there faster and more efficiently. And the pieces that always get cut out of these projects, they're never the developers that write the software and code it. They're always the change management, the strategy, that how long it takes the state to make a choice about trade-offs, all the stuff that feels like it's easier to cut, but all the stuff that turns projects like this, into disasters, right? Now, whether or not Deloitte, right, told them what I'm sure they knew it was going to take to be successful, and maybe the state decided on their own, I hear you, thank you for your advice, but we're going
Well,
this
clearly
way.
there were some indications, right? The feds warned on one of the implementations of one of the 5 programs, do not go forward, do not launch this project. It's written in a letter, it was sent to the agency. But our states, and especially Rhode Island, I'll let other states worry about themselves, but is Rhode Island really built for this level of innovation? I mean, you talk about it, you're seeing little tiny increments. They put fishing licenses online. That was a big thing, right? You can buy a fishing license online. We're at baby steps in Rhode Island, little tiny incremental changes. Now, based on UHIP, maybe that's the way we should do it. But do we need to reinvent state government for the benefit of cost savings, efficiencies, being more user-friendly, being more customer-focused? I don't want to go to a state agency and stand in line for hours.
Right.
It's not a good experience. You almost always have to come back again. It costs you, the person, the individual, either your vacation time or your productivity at work or whatever it is. Should we really have a really macro rethink about how we're delivering services?
What in the scenario?
And I don't know why you're in Chicago when we need the help here.
Well, in the scenario that you just laid out, you just described pain points for the citizen. Right. And how do I get at the services or transaction I need or the information I need in a way that is designed for me, the citizen?
Right.
So if I had to go wait in line before to get a fishing license, and now I can fill out a form online and push send, and in the back comes my license, that's a real value to me as
Absolutely,
a citizen.
100%.
Right? And so that's a solution that you literally designed for the customer.
Right.
If you achieved efficiencies in delivering the service that way, all the better. Right. But when you do it the other way around, where you design the solutions for efficiencies without anchoring them in what's better for the citizen, you fall into the trap that that we're talking about now. I believe all innovation should start with customer experience. What's the job to be done? What's the pain point regarding how they get that job done today? How can you deliver value to the customer? And then yes, how do we capture value by doing it better and using technology to do it? So I believe that these issues are happening everywhere in governments at every level. And if we could just flip from thinking about it through the context of the agencies and the way they work today, and the programs and the way those programs are designed, to say, let's reimagine those public services, starting with a new customer experience. Imagine what that customer experience, a citizen experience, should be, and now back into what capabilities do I need to deliver it? That's both technology and the people side. And the big challenge that most governments and public service entities have is the change management issues, right? The people that are fighting to keep their jobs and they don't want the software to make it more efficient, or the people that like the workflow the way it is and they maybe don't want to change the experience for the customer. You have to start with the customer experience you want, and then you have to manage a change process, which is never easy, to get towards that future vision. You don't start with technology. Too many of these projects are all about the technology and thinking you can jam the technology in and get all the benefits. Never works that way. You start with the new customer experience and then you say, now what technology can I use? Where can software help us to do this? And then you work through those change management issues. That's a much better process. It works in healthcare, it works in education, and it works in public services, but we don't do it that way. Right, and we fall into the same traps.
Absolutely.
The other thing that should happen here, when it comes to the technology and the software, is if all 50 states are struggling with the same challenge, why are we building new software to solve a problem that lots of other places are solving already?
And they're all federal programs being integrated.
Why aren't these solutions up in the cloud with someone who knows how to keep that software timely and relevant and make changes in it? And all we do is put the front end on it to customize the Rhode Island experience part of that. Right. But instead, we still do it old school, where we go hire consultants and system integrators. We think we're different.
Wait. Don't besmirch consultants and innovators. That's what BIF's all about.
Yes, well, we need consultants and systems integrators that are in the 21st century saying to their clients, why are we building this from scratch?
Right,
Why
we've
aren't
done
we
it.
using solutions and then customizing these solutions in order on the front end to create a unique experience for Rhode Islanders, right?
Let's jump out of UHIP. Let's
Okay.
go around the world in our last 10 minutes. Amazon HQ2, the state finally turned over
saw.
some, but
Yeah.
not all,
Yeah.
redacting the financial incentives. Did you take a look at the application?
I did. This I read. It wasn't 42 pages, so I could actually read.
It was actually 137 pages.
No, but I read the part that was the summary
Right.
of what
we
happened.
put up about
Yep.
30 or 40 pages.
Yeah.
Listen, kudos for giving out
Yes.
the proposal. I think it was a mistake not to give out what the incentives were. They are what they are. It really doesn't matter. It's a one-day story, whatever the incentives were. Now it's going to be a multi-day, multi-month. I think the Providence Journal has sued
try to get at the numbers.
We have not joined that yet. We may join that
Yeah.
as well. It's Rhode Islanders' money. If you're going to put it on a piece of paper and send it off to a company, I don't know. And the deal's dead. I don't think they're doubling back to Providence.
Yeah, but I do put some credence in the argument that if we put all that out there, then the next company comes in and they're going to say, look what you were willing to do here.
Okay,
but it was such a huge opportunity.
But there's an
right?
answer to that. Okay, when you become Amazon, you can have that deal. If you're going to bring in 50,000 people
Which would be the
at
argument,
$120,000 average salary and $4 billion in infrastructure investment, you can have that deal too.
The part that I was most interested in, I mean, I'll leave you guys to fight for
freedom,
getting
transparency,
at the numbers,
good government.
Right, but the fact that they sold their pitch, the messaging, I thought it was really interesting. Here's the piece that I went right to, right? I went right to this thing that they called the Amazon Academy.
Yeah.
Right. That basically said we all 11 of our colleges and universities are going to collaborate to help create the workforce that you're going to need, to fill this pipeline.
Yep.
Right. And I look at that and I say, tell me what that collaboration is about. Is that just the existing course catalogs of the 11 colleges and universities, or do you actually imagine a new delivery model where, God forbid, all 11 schools would collaborate to create a new model to create a future workforce, right, that's ready for the 21st century work that Amazon would need to be done? And then, if we could do that, now we have something interesting, and I read that and say, you know what? Okay, maybe we didn't win the Amazon war.
But let's start pitching that to some other companies.
Never mind pitch it, actually do it first, because if we could actually do that, we would have been in a much stronger position.
The Boston Globe had a story or two last week or the week before about the demise of these small liberal arts colleges. Newberry, I think, is the one that's lost to 80% of its students over the last 10, 15 years. Mount Ida announced it was closing. It's turning over its 87-acre campus to UMass. There's going to be a lot of pressure on these second-tier private colleges that really can't compete with top-tier colleges and universities and can't justify their price. And folks are going to take the free education at CCRI and make the investment to URI
there's
or
a lot of disruption that is now underway in the higher ed system. In fact, why I was in Chicago last week.
We're getting big insights. We're going to see Chicago higher education immediately improve.
Well, I was actually in Chicago and meeting with 6 community college presidents and their entire leadership teams to reimagine community college. What does the next model look like, right, to produce the 21st century workforce in their community? They weren't all from Chicago. They came to Chicago, and that's where we spent with them. So I'm fresh off of just a really inspiring week working with college presidents and their teams saying, wait a minute, what if the job to be done for the student is different today? And what if we have to completely reimagine, right, the way we create, deliver, and capture value? Because as you say, a lot of these colleges are being disrupted. I mean, if you're a Brown or RISD, you're going to be fine, right? If you're a top tier university, but if you're in that middle tier, as you say, they are going out of business. Why? Because our kids, the baby boomers' kids, have now graduated from college.
Yep.
So there was a huge bubble of market demand that even marginal schools were able to, if they were well led, right, to really strengthen. And we've had several schools here that are far from marginal, really well led, and go look at what's happening, at Bryant, or Roger Williams.
Yep.
I mean,
Transformed over
they
the last
had
20
that
years.
demand. That demand is now gone.
Yep.
So now the fight for good students, is on.
Yep.
And you're going to see some schools that are not up for
By
it.
the way,
that are
not
gonna
only
go
for
out.
good students, for people who can pay a bill.
No, well, not to mention the price point.
Right.
So, my view is that we need a lot more models, different price points, ways to bring learning platforms to students and families where they live, where they work, as opposed to expecting them to fit into a traditional either 2 or 4 year model. I think you're going to see a lot of changes there.
Kate Neagle broke a story a week ago Saturday, an internal document at CCRI that showed that only 200, give or take, up to 700 or in the Rhode Island Promise are on any level of schedule to meet the requirements, and that one of the solutions that the school is proposing is to drop the grade point average from 2.5 to 2.0. Listen, 2.5 at a community college in Rhode Island is not a high bar. If we're talking about constantly, and the governor talks about it, you talk about it, Gary Sass talks about it, all the smart people talk about it, that we have an undereducated workforce. It's a detriment to us bringing in and retaining top companies. And now we're going to talk about giving kids free education, but lowering the standards. That's not a winning solution.
Yeah, I think the problem to solve for here is, we have to make it affordable. We can debate whether making it free, even if you make it free, as long as it's still the same model, I have to go to the CCRI campus, I have to get out of work, or
well, by the way,
I have to,
the vast majority of them are not going to be done in 2 years, so it's not going to be free.
No, they're not going to finish.
They're not going to be free, and think about that, the worst case scenario. The state's now invested 2 years of free education into many of them. They're not through the doors. They now have the burden that they didn't really anticipate to pay for it, or they drop out and don't finish. And we're 2 years in the hole. Maybe they're marginally better workforce, but we're not hitting those benchmarks, giving them that.
Well, these schools I was working with last week, they're all trying to play with new models that, one, are competency-based, not course, and take so many courses and get a piece of paper that says you graduated, but actually measuring competence and proficiencies that are relevant to the workplace. Completely different model, right? Big transformation for most of these colleges.
But isn't it really about the ability to teach people to learn? We launched GoLocal Live just over a year ago. Everything we now do is almost different than what we did a year ago. And that's in a year.
Right.
And we're doing things differently. The protocols are different. The efficiencies are better. We've expanded the number of hours. We're doing live music, a whole nother studio, et cetera, et cetera. We're looking for people who can learn. We're not looking for people who have, to be perfectly honest, any set of skills per se. I mean, yes, some basic skills and some basic things, but it's the ones who succeed are the ones who can learn and learn quickly and love the element of learning.
So in your case, and I don't think you're alone, the competencies you want, from graduates, relate more to interpersonal skills, leadership skills, being able to work effectively with groups, creativity to solve problems. These are the competencies you need, and then you'll teach them your business, right? Most of these, particularly the community colleges,
they create our business. That's what we're asking them to do. We're looking for there to be creativity, that everybody here is creative.
Well, that's right. And so the traditional higher ed model is not that.
No.
The traditional higher ed model is we'll give you a degree that'll have immediate credibility. You're going to hire them because they have that degree name, which you're probably not. Or two, we'll give you a degree that implies that you're capable of doing something, that you mastered a certain amount, subjects, right? When what you really want is the actual competence itself, right? And so changing to a competency-based model is one of the big transformations. The second one is recognizing that nobody fits the traditional 2 or 4 year mold anymore. That the people who need these platforms have real lives, have jobs, need to work, right? How do we fit a model at a price point they can afford into their lifestyle? And instead we're still back on, this is the way it works, this is the role,
Right.
this is what happens in the classroom, this is how we deliver it. So the schools that are going to win are the ones that are experimenting all the time. They're taking cohorts of learners and they're trying to come up with new models, again, using technology in order to help them get that done. And we need to move much faster here in Rhode Island in the higher ed system, right? And it's happening across the country.
Absolutely.
Right? Because
We've
they're
gotta
being
compete.
forced to do it now.
Listen, next week,
Okay?
2 things. We're talking community colleges,
Okay, good.
and we're talking 40-page applications. And you have to fill
And
out.
I'm expected
you
to
have to
fill
fill
that out.
out the 40-page application. I want to know if you can fill it out. I literally could not fill it
tried.
out. Not even close. I couldn't get to past page 3. I was stuck in the directions. I want to thank everybody. Thank you to Saul Kaplan and Gary Sass for coming in on old school Business Monday, back to our grassroots, where we came from. Thank our friends at Deepwater Wind and from the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm Josh Fenton. Tune in tomorrow for Ava Gaudette with Arts and Entertainment and Kate Nagel from 4 to 5 on News and Politics. Thanks, everyone.